My parents mocked my gardening dream. They sat me down at my brother's wedding. But now their restaurant thrives on my vision. As a child, I was always aware that I was unique among my relatives. I am a 35-year-old old woman who comes from a long line of wealthy upstate New York restaurateurs. My mother, 60, oversees all the employees at our family's traditional Italian restaurant, which is run with an iron hand by my father, 65. Next in line is my 38-year-old older brother, Mike, who is the golden boy destined to take over the business. I have been with Liberty Mutual Insurance for 10 years, moving up the corporate ladder to become a senior claims adjuster. My name frequently appeared on quarterly performance awards, and my 28th floor office had a breathtaking, stunning view of Central Park. I had a six-figure salary, a cozy Manhattan apartment, and the pride of my parents, who never stopped bragging of their successful business daughter. On paper, I was living the American dream, yet I felt like I was slowly suffocating every morning as I looked at my computer screen, claiming my escape. My lunch breaks in the little I had designed on top of our office building was the only thing that kept me going. I had persuaded the management to allow me to renovate it, the abandoned area, pay for it out of my own pocket, spending thousands on soil and seasonal flowers. My colleagues thought I was crazy, but those priceless moments spent among the flowers and herbs were the only times I felt fully alive. I spent almost every weekend in Granny Rose's garden, which was my true sanctuary, the most exquisite garden I had ever seen. It surrounded her Victorian home on the outskirts of town. Granny Rose taught me the language of flowers, companion planting and soil pH, while my brother spent his weekends studying catering. One day in particular, while I helped her plant spring tulip bulbs. Tulip bulbs stand out in my memory. The air was crisp with the aroma of falling leaves, and it was early October. My hands were in the soil longer than necessary, and Grandma saw it. She patted the ground with her aged hands and said, "You feel it too, don't you?" I nodded, unable to put into words how it felt to work with plants, and how alive I felt in her garden. This connection to the earth. Not everyone has it, you know. It's a gift. She showed me her treasured collection of gardening journals that day, which contained decades of handwritten notes about every plant she had ever grown, complete with meticulous sketches and pressed flowers. One day she continued, "These will be yours when you're ready to follow your true path." The pivotal moment came at Thanksgiving dinner the year before, with the aroma of Dad's special gravy filled the air. It was the typical family gathering at the restaurant. Mike was showing off the new wine cellar in the restaurant, his latest venture, which Dad had readily approved. As I sat there, fingering the letter of approval from the New York Botanical Garden School of Professional Horticulture, in my pocket, Mom was talking about plans to expand the catering business. I finally the confidence to eat the pumpkin pie and turkey. I said, my voice barely steady, "I'm going back to school. I've enrolled in the Botanical Gardens Landscape Design program." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's fork clattered on her plate, and Dad's cheeks turned the color of cranberry sauce. Mike snorted and nearly choked on his drink. "What are you?" The wine glass vibrated as Dad's voice boomed across the table. "You want to leave your work to play with plants? Plants when you're not getting any younger?" Mom's palm gripped her breast as her eyes welled up with tears. "But you're a senior claims adjuster. Darling, how many people would kill for your job? Do you know? How is your 401k? Your health insurance?" Every time he saw me looking after Mom's houseplants, Mike, who called me the gardener since we were young, couldn't help but laugh. "So you're going to start gardening like a professional? Are you crazy? Living in a treehouse is the next step." Even though my hands were shaking under the table, I forced myself to continue. My letter of resignation has already been handed in. The 15th of December is my last day. Classes start in January. The plates jumped when Dad slammed his hand down on the table. You can't count on our support when you do this. We didn't send you to business school, only to see you lose it all, because of a midlife crisis. Granny Rose was the only one who remained calm. She put her wine glass down deliberately, with that quiet strength that could still make my father feel like a little boy. She asked him, "Joe, when was the last time you felt truly happy to do something you did choose?" Feeling defeated, I went to Grandma Rose's house the day after the Thanksgiving disaster. She was pruning her beloved roses in her garden. When I spotted her, she was wearing her favorite faded blue gardening apron, the one with pockets filled with plant and pruning tools. Even though it was cold in November, as I helped her prune, I remarked, "Granny, they don't understand. You think I'm wasting my life. Maybe they are right. Maybe it is crazy of me to start again at 35. She put down her scissors. Granny Rose looked at me with those wise eyes that had seen so much. Your parents don't see the world the way we do, but they only want what's best for you. Sweetheart, these plants in the earth itself are magical. It would be a sin to throw away their gift." She showed me her and her most fragile plants. She showed me a tiny orchid that was having to bloom as the warm, humid air surrounding us. "Look at this one." I knew better, even though everyone insisted it couldn't be saved. The most exquisite things don't often show themselves at first sight. Like you, darling. I started taking classes at the New York Botanical Garden. That winter, basic living expenses and 2 years of schooling would be covered by the money I saved from the insurance company. I gave up my view of Manhattan for a small balcony where I could try container gardening. When I moved to a smaller flat in the Bronx, near the school, the program proved more than I had anticipated. Landscaping required complicated calculations, a thorough understanding of ecological and architectural principles. It wasn't just about making things look nice. My dreams were filled with combinations of plants and garden designs. And every night I went to bed feeling both tired and satisfied. Rachel, a 28-year-old classmate with bright red hair and infectious energy, became my best friend. Then one day, while we were working on our CAD projects, she said to me, "You should see your face when you're designing. You seem to speak your native language." Finally, anyway, family gatherings became an ordeal. Even though I moved from the family table to the bar, I continued to go to the restaurant for Sunday dinner. Mike would joke that I still hadn't mastered the art of pushing a lawnmower properly, while Mom gave me newspaper clippings about company job vacancies. Dad would sourly discuss Mike's intentions to expand the restaurant. I entered a small landscape design competition 6 months into my training. It was just a small event organized by the town's horticultural society to create sustainable urban areas that met social and environmental was the main aim of my design. I was shocked to win first prize. There was even a short article about it in the local paper. At our next Sunday dinner, eagerly spread the news, in the hope that it would finally change their minds. Instead, Dad barely lifted his head from his plate. "That's good, darling. But when are you going to start taking your life seriously?" Mike added, grinning as usual. "Hey, maybe you could garden for the dumpster area at the restaurant? Make it look really fancy," trying to be helpful in her own way. My mom said, "If you apologized, Liberty Mutual would definitely take you back, Mrs. Henderson. Henderson has informed me that your position has not yet been filled yet." I contacted Granny Rose as I drove home that evening. With tears clouding my vision, I vented my frustrations to her. She listened to me calmly. She revealed her father was the same way. When he started the restaurant, his father wanted him to have a career in law. Look at him now. He is so sure that his way is the only way. It's interesting how life comes full circle. My love, as the months passed, my skills improved. Small commissions began to come in, first from friends and then from their friends. A local lifestyle blog featured my container garden designs. My family, however, were unimpressed. As Mike continued his increasingly gardener jokes, Dad would change the subject every time my work came up. Then Grandma Rose received the devastating news that her cancer was aggressive. She disappeared within weeks. She was still trying to give me gardening advice as she lay propped up in her hospital bed. The last time I visited her, the winter bulbs? She said in a weak but determined tone. Remember to plant them deep enough. And never forget that you're doing exactly what you were meant to do. My love, I had no idea then that the circumstances of my brother's impending marriage would fundamentally change the relationships in our family. And yet, this is a story that deserves to be told separately. First update. I wanted to explain what happened at my brother's wedding in the aftermath of the. Firstly, Granny Roses has undergone an unexpected change. She has left me her entire house and garden, which is currently valued at well over $800,000. Dad had been eyeing this property for years. He wanted to use it for more restaurant parking. Dad's face took on that recognizable purple hue when the solicitor announced her decision. This is absurd. He exploded. Mike was even more blunt. He scoffed and said, "Great. Now she can really play gardener with her own little kingdom." Little kingdom. Amanda, his 32-year-old fiancée, giggled beside him and was already with the same contempt as my brother. But the fascinating part was that there was a condition attached to the property. Granny's plan for the garden had to guide my development and maintenance. She had left behind thorough plans and notebooks full of ideas for transforming a part of the garden into a demonstration of environmentally friendly urban gardening. To save some of Granny's rarest plants, I threw myself into transforming the garden and working with neighborhood conservation organizations. After word spread, I was contacted by a respected gardening magazine about including the renovation in their Heritage Garden series. My brother's wedding followed. The large cream envelope with the invitation was dripping with self-importance in gold foil. Considering that Amanda's father owns half the property in the county, it was obviously designed to impress her wealthy family. I decided to go and wore a simple but stylish designer dress that I had bought with some of the money I had won in my competition. The ceremony was held in the most expensive place in town, and Mike made sure that everyone knew that he had personally covered all the costs. But I later found out that Dad had played a big part. The reception was where the real drama began. I was seated at table 23, which was next to the kitchen doors, and literally the farthest table from the main family table, even though we were immediate family. In fact, instead of my name, my place card said the gardener. Amanda went out of her way to introduce me to her social acquaintances. "And this is Mike's sister," she continued, smiling condescendingly. "Person who, what are you doing again? Putting some flowers in the ground or something?" Her companions chuckled behind their champagne glasses. Anyway, karma tends to even things out. A famous event planner who knew me from the gardening magazine story had been hired by the venue. "Your sustainable garden designs are revolutionary," she said enthusiastically as she approached my table. She expressed her honor to meet me. "I've been with your Instagram makeover project." The mayor, Amanda's uncle, took the microphone to give his speech, and that was the real kicker. He complimented my creative designs and highlighted my work on the city's new Sustainable Parks initiative. All the members of the society who had been giggling suddenly turned to stare at me with renewed curiosity as the mayor continued to praise the family's talented landscape architect. Dad and Mike sat there with frozen expressions. Amanda tried to control the situation, by frantically whispering to her companions. After the speech, a number of Amanda's family members approached me to discuss the garden design. The head of the city's Parks and Recreation Department was one of them. For their next urban renewal project, he said they were looking for creative designers. Mom called the next day. For the first time in months, she spoke hesitantly. I read the article about Rose's garden in the magazine. The pictures, they're breathtaking. There, you've really created something unique. Although Dad and Mike haven't said anything yet, I've noticed that the restaurant's about Paige. Now, their family's commitment to sustainable urban design, it's ironic that they still haven't congratulated me on any of my achievements. Next week I have a meeting with the Parks Department to discuss the urban renewal project. As the proposed site next to my father's restaurant, it would be my biggest job yet. As Granny Rose used to say, sometimes life has a way of coming full circle. I appreciate all your encouraging comments. 2 months have passed since the wedding, and things have changed in unexpected ways. The project for the Parks Department has been larger than I had anticipated. They wanted to transform an entire city block into a sustainable urban green space, complete with community gardens and an education center. Rather than just designing a simple garden, the proposal would drastically reduce the number of parking spaces nearby establishments, such as my father's restaurant. I noticed my dad and Mike sitting in the back row. Their faces grew darker with each slide of my presentation. When the first designs were presented at the council meeting, the car park, which they had been using informally for years, would be removed as part of the project and replaced by a community space, and vertical garden would take its place. Mike stood up during the public comment session. His face was flushed. Local businesses will be destroyed by this proposal. Has anyone thought about how, on the area's well-known eateries? He deliberately avoided eye contact with me. The mayor, Amanda's uncle, then raised his voice. Indeed, research shows that urban green spaces increase property values. There are designated restaurant zones with outdoor dining areas in your sister's design. If anything, that should help your business. Everyone in the room understood the irony. It was obvious that several of the counselors were trying not to smile. But here is where things get even more interesting. Our family restaurant received an unexpected visit from a Michelin inspector. Last week, my father had dreamed of this moment. For decades, a small matter, however, was that their famous herb garden, which provided the fresh herbs for their famous dishes, had suddenly begun to deteriorate. I was working on my project plans at Granny's house when my mother called me in a panic. The plants will die tomorrow. The inspector will be back for dinner. Your father, he's not taking it well. My father called an hour later. His usually authoritative voice sounds strained. We need your help. I spoke in a neutral tone. I didn't think gardening was a legitimate profession. He paused for a long moment before asking, "What is your consulting fee?" He choked up after I quoted a figure. $30,000 for consultation and emergency garden rehabilitation. That's highway robbery. He stuttered. In reality, that is less than the going rate for horticultural management emergencies. However, I'll offer you $25,000 as a family discount. You made the payment in one day. I identified the problem: poor soil pH and drainage problems. To repair and preserve their priceless herbs, the inspector's inspection went well, and the local newspaper ran an article about the restaurant's potential for a Michelin star, highlighting their creative herb garden, designed by a family member and famous landscape architect. My father was by the reporter about the design of the garden when he had to admit my involvement. I saw him struggle to swallow his pride. The most beautiful aspect: I had nothing to do with the failed garden. All they had done was follow an old gardening books, outdated maintenance instructions. They had almost lost their dream garden because they had refused to, from an expert, especially me. My father now has to grin and explain that his daughter, the landscape architect, created the restaurant's herb garden whenever anyone mentions it. Since then, the term gardener has not been used in a derogatory way, but the real fulfillment came from an unexpected source. I was recruited to create Amanda's new showpiece garden, her mother's garden, a legendary socialite. Her justification: the look on Mike and Amanda's faces when they saw me in their home, discussing plans with her mother about the price in the conservatory, was priceless, especially when Amanda's mother mentioned my fee, which was 3 times what I charged my father. No family discount. Well, darling, if you're good enough for the city's urban renewal project, you're good enough for us. My design studio is officially opening next week. The prime location next to the restaurant, where my father wanted to expand, was the ideal place for me. Her herb garden, which I now tend for a hefty monthly fee, is clearly visible from the large windows. It's interesting how life works itself out. Grandma Rose would have loved the irony. Third update: 3 months have passed since my last post, and I would like to offer the resolution of the story. Your support has been amazing on our journey. The restaurant's adjacent urban renewal project began to attract national attention. The sustainable gardens were featured in a number of major design magazines, and the project nominated for an annual innovation award by a well-known environmental group. My father's restaurant received unexpected attention as a result of the exposure, but not in the way he had hoped. People started traveling, especially to see this innovative restaurant, with its magnificent herb garden, created by the architect turned gardener. The families, the skillful fusion of horticultural and culinary, began to be noticed by food experts. A documentary team from a well-known streaming service contacted me last about including the project in their Urban Change series. The gripping family story of the restaurateur's daughter's transformation. Urban gardening piqued their curiosity. In particular, the producer wanted to shoot at the restaurant and in my design studio, considering that local business associations had praised the project's positive impact on the community. My father couldn't say no. Without appearing petulant, a feature on the Link Gardens was also requested by Food and Wine magazine. The producer interviewed my father about his early resistance to my career changes throughout the filming. His awkward squirming as he tried to explain himself was captured on camera. We just wanted the best for her. That's all. I had an unexpected visitor to my studio the next day. My father appeared older and more exposed than I had ever seen him before. He was holding his original recipe book from when he first opened the restaurant, a battered leather-bound book. Your grandmother was the only person who encouraged me to open this restaurant, he replied quietly. My father wanted me to be a lawyer. Cooking, he claimed, was beneath our family. He put the cookery book on my desk. Wasn't I becoming just like him? I'm trying to give my children the life I think they should have. They should have 80% of their vegetables and herbs now, from a rooftop garden project which started with the rehabilitation of their herb garden. There was a waiting list for months for tables with garden views. The restaurant's Instagram following exploded with pictures of the vertical gardens and food. Experts praised the farm-to-table harmony. At a recent business meeting, even Mike had to admit there was a difference. Indeed, they now had to set up formal meetings. With me gritting my teeth, he acknowledged that there had gone up 40% since the garden renovation, after their mother hired me as the official landscape architect for her country club restoration. Amanda's attitude changed drastically. Suddenly, she told everyone how she had always felt that her sister-in-law's relationship with nature was unique. Last week it all came together. The success of our urban revitalization initiative impressed the city's sustainability, who suggested a significant expansion. My father's restaurant was to be the focal point of a green corridor that would connect a number of nearby businesses. The catch: the restaurant would have to create a show garden on the remaining car park. In addition to promising to highlight the restaurant in its tourism promotions, the city offered significant tax breaks. This time, instead of a dinner where everyone was talking about me, my father called an emergency family meeting. I sat at the head of the table in the restaurant's private dining room. For the first time, "We need your help," he said, his voice full of meaning. "Not just as an advisor but as a collaborator. You made an unexpected proposal." They wanted to form a joint venture that would combine the restaurant and my design studio into a horticultural and culinary experience center, to include my professional name. My father even suggested changing it. The financial estimates were provided by Mike, who seemed to have bitten into a lemon. It was hard to ignore the figures. Even he had to admit that my hobby had become a lucrative business venture. Mom produced a long-forgotten old picture of me at the age of 6, proudly showing off my first tomato plant in Grandma Rose's garden with pride. "We should have been there then," she said quietly. "A corporate office was never the place for you. The companies are now integrated." An exquisite herb leaf design can be found in the restaurant's new logo. Every dish on the menu identifies the exact location of its ingredients, and the menu proudly proclaims, "From our garden to your table." Our project was featured in a national magazine's list of the top 10 innovative family businesses last week, when they singled out the second-generation restaurant family for embracing their daughter's goal of transforming urban dining. The irony was not lost on anyone. It all started in Granny Rose's garden, which is now a sustainable urban agriculture education center. We work with local schools to provide educational programs, and the waiting list for workshops is months long. The most unexpected thing: before the restaurant opens, Dad now spends his mornings in the garden. He was wearing one of our branded garden aprons. The last time I saw him, he was busy tending to the herbs. He seemed calmer than I had seen him for a long time. At family gatherings, people used to make fun of me for being a gardener. Do you remember that? Welcome to the garden table, where the gardener's vision meets culinary excellence, the host now says to the guests. I was moved to tears by a letter I received yesterday from a high school student who had taken part in one of our gardening sent it to us. She wrote about how she was motivated to defy her parents, who wanted her to pursue a career in medicine. After seeing my story in the documentary, her love was environmental science. A sketch of a garden idea was included in the letter. It looked a lot like my early sketches from Granny Rose's journals. In an effort to start our first children's mentoring program, I've invited her to as an intern this summer. I've learned a lot about family lessons from this whole ordeal. You don't always have to follow the path you're paved by your ancestors. Sometimes honoring your heritage means expanding it to include new possibilities. My father built a restaurant that served delicious meals and brought people together to nourish not only their bodies, but also their souls. I added gardens to help children feel connected to the earth. I would like to express my gratitude to everyone on Reddit who helped me along the way. When my own family failed to see my value, your support has kept me going. I would like to express my gratitude to everyone who has had similar experiences in pursuing their aspirations. In spite of family opposition, you made me. I wasn't the only one. Stay the course if you're facing similar difficulties, sometimes the same, that your family makes fun of, turns out to be the secret to changing both your and their lives.